I pledge allegiance to the flag. Interesting, the controversy that for the first time in American history makes such headlines. I submit to you, it is still not the major voice in America. It is a very minuscule voice, and somehow in America, the minuscule voice has a way of grabbing headlines. And that's become possible because, generally speaking, our press in America is incredibly liberal, and they have become the voice, the false prophet, if you will, even of America. And so the press has come to a point of projecting the heart of America, as they would say anyway, and yet we understand clearly middle America, mainstream America, grassroots America is still very clearly good old-fashioned Americans with conservative values, which is why it's very important for us to make sure that we take action with our liberty and our freedom every time there's an election that takes place. You know, we see the controversy with "In God We Trust" on the coins, and people wanting to take that off. And I assure you, if you polled everyone in America, there wouldn't be 1% of Americans even remotely interested in taking that off our coins. Even many people, many who are not even remotely serving God on any level, still understand there is a deity, there is a creator, and it sure can't hurt to pay him tribute in some way. And so, you know, this is a time in America for us to remember and become patriotic. I really wanted to talk about the heart of a patriot today, but we decided because of the AC scenario and because Americans are so soft, and this has been a good test to see who all is ready to go on a missions trip, and I'm afraid most of y'all have failed the last few weeks if you've complained about the heat, and I'm going, geez, you need to go to Ghana or the Philippines or something for a 5-hour church service. You don't know what hot is. But it's a good time in America for us to reflect and remember and realize who we are and what we're about. So I love George Washington. I wanted to talk about the patriot of all patriots again today. And who knows, we get the AC back online, maybe next week I'll do that. But as I was thinking this week, and my daughter kept saying the Pledge of Allegiance, and that's when I thought, you know what, we're going to hang a flag and we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. And you know, there's just something, a powerful nugget hidden within that pledge that we need to remember today, and why it's so imperative that we never lose that aspect of our Pledge of Allegiance to a flag that represents our nation. And of course, it's the wonderful line, under God. Under God. And that seems to be the only line that a lot of people have problems with. Isn't it amazing how people get all weirded out when you talk about God, and even more weird when you get personal talking about Jesus? Weird, isn't it? You can talk about the man upstairs. You can talk about the big guy. You can be as impersonal as you want and people are fine. But when you start getting a little too personal about God, people start getting very uncomfortable. And there's something about that line, under God, in the Pledge of Allegiance that makes people very uncomfortable. And yet, it is that one little remark, those two words, under God, that makes the whole pledge possible. And those of you that are a little bit of a history buff, then you understand clearly what I'm talking about when I say if it were not for the under God part, the rest of that wouldn't even exist. There would be no American flag that represents this great nation we call the United States of America. It is because of the very hand of God and the hand of God upon people of God that this whole thing became possible. And I was pondering that this week. I thought, you know, most Americans, they could at least get through most of the Pledge of Allegiance. Maybe many of you have not said that for many years prior to today. But many people, most people, would be able to say the Pledge of Allegiance. And we would be familiar with the under God part. But I got to thinking this week, I don't really know what that means to a lot of different people. And I would even ask you today, what does that mean to you? One nation under God. Because some people would say, well, that just means that as a nation, at least on the onset, we believed in the existence of God. But as we know from the Word of God, even demons believe. But I don't think that demons would make a very good nation if they got together and said, let's just make a nation unto ourselves. I don't think it would be real good, do you? So if we look at one nation under God and we ask ourselves, what does that mean? Then we must understand up front, that doesn't just mean it's a whole bunch of people that believes in the existence of God. Under God is a very, very key expression, with under being a super key word, under God, under the rule, under the authority, under the majesty, under the kingship, under the order of God, the creator of the universe. And so it was very important to our founding fathers that as this thing was put in place, as they carved the pieces of our nation, and they began to assemble the philosophy and the mindsets and the attitudes of what this nation would be together, then it was very clear in their understanding, if this thing doesn't come under the headship of God, this thing does not stand a chance. And when I look at people like George Washington, even guys like Thomas Jefferson, who was a little bit unusual in their philosophy of life, and even his view of God, when all the dust cleared, there was a common understanding among these great founding fathers. If God is not the Lord of this thing is not going to stand a chance. And so when we say the Pledge of Allegiance, we're declaring that this nation has existed, does exist, and will continue to exist for one reason. Because we are under God. We are under the lordship of God. If I were to take that thought, and I were to ask most people, okay, so what does that mean to you? That we are under the lordship, the dominion, we're under the rule and the reign of God Himself. What does that mean to us? And most of us would probably say, well, it just means what you said, that we're under His rule, we're under His reign. He's the big guy, He's the king of it all. But I think we would all agree that that would need to be somehow interpreted in our heart as something more than just that. What does it mean to be a nation under the rule, under the majesty, under the kingship of God Himself? And as I was thinking about that this week, it became very simple in my understanding what that has meant for the last, what are we now, 265 years old, 263 years old, 267, what, how much? 234. Boy, I'm ahead of the game here. Many years as a nation, many years the people of a nation declaring we are under the rule and the reign of God. As I was thinking about that this week, it became very obvious to me what that meant. It meant from the onset that this nation was founded upon the dreams and the vision of a people who understood that if we don't submit ourselves to God through the leading of His Spirit, then where are we supposed to go with this thing?